Hey boys, in the pool today. Lovely and hot and sunny afternoon in Riyadh. Gonna read you chapter 9 and then go straight into chapter 10. Alright? You brushed your teeth? You all snuggled in? You had a lovely day? I've seen you building sandcastles on the beach with Grandad. It was great fun. Right, then we'll begin. Finn sat at the desk in his bedroom, below a windowsill cluttered with coins and batteries and broken bits of old phone, and a frayed cuddly toy with 8 arms and soft fans that he'd never been able to bring himself to throw out. His goldfish, Bubbles, picked about the stones in his tank, occasionally darting in fright at his own reflection. In front of him was a large hardback book called The Most Great Lives of Legend Hunters from Ancient Times to Modern Day. Finn was meant to be studying it, but his eyes were not on the book. Instead, they were now on the dark, quiet street outside, which was still glistening with the wet of the day's rain. His mind was somewhere else entirely. It was replaying the sight of the car that morning, crumpling like a tin can, the disappointment on his father's face, the moment when the Minotaur had cornered him. The smell of its breath still clung to Finn's nostrils, forcing him to run the scene over and over again in his head, and he felt his shame grow with every replay until it formed a large knot in his chest. From deep within the house he could hear the dull thuds and whirs. His father had been making something for weeks now, sometimes long into the night. Since returning home, Finn had only briefly seen him. When he walked into the kitchen while Finn was doing his homework, telling him what section of The Most Great Lives he had to read that night, while prizing a blade from the food processor before leaving again without explanation. There was a thump so loud it sent a shiver through the house and shook Finn out of his self-pity, then silence. Finn glanced outside, trying to clear his mind. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out the curved, diamond-like object that had been in the Minotaur's nose, and held it up to let the streetlight catch its edges. Before he could study it further, his door opened. Finn quickly threw the crystal into his open drawer. "Ma'am, you're supposed to knock before you come in." "Oh, sorry, Finn," his mother said, entering the room. "Was just worried about you. I heard you had a tough day today." They sat on the edge of his bed together. "How was work?" he asked her. His mother was a dentist, and as she did most days, she had brought home a faint odour of chemicals and ground teeth. This was more comforting to Finn than he had ever stopped to consider. "Not as exciting as your day, thankfully, although everyone was talking about the legend that came through this morning. Luckily, all I had to do was wave the drill at them and they shut up pretty quickly." She put her arm around Finn and went to give him a big kiss on the top of his head. Finn smiled but squirmed away. "I'm not a baby, Mum." "You're still my baby," she replied quietly. He groaned in protest. He didn't want to admit it, but it warmed him when she said that. There was a vroom from deep inside the house, followed by a long squeak of a drill. "I wish he'd hurry up and finish whatever he's building down there," said Finn's mum. There was another thud. "Have you talked to him?" "What about this morning?" "Not much. It's fine, really. Stop worrying." Finn's mum looked at him. "I knew what I was getting into when I met your father. You never had the choice." "Sometimes I wish you were a hunter too," said Finn to his mum. "You'd be a really good hunter." Finn's mum grinned. "I don't think my parents would have let me marry your dad if I'd been expected to do that. I don't think I would have married him. Anyway, you know the rules. Civilians can't become legend hunters, Finn. You've got to be born into it." Finn and his mother were quiet for quite a few moments. The only sound was the goldfish pecking at the pebbles. "I mean it though, Mum. You'd be a great hunter." "I could give them a good flossing until they succumbed, or threaten them with a root canal," she said. Finn smiled weakly, sent another trickle of warmth through his chest, loosening the knot a little. "I'll talk to your dad," his mother said, standing up. "Get him to go a bit easier on you." "No," snapped Finn. before quickly calming down. "Oh, please don't. I'm trying really hard. I understand." His mum gave him another kiss on the head before she left. This time he didn't squirm so much. Finn got up and locked the door after her, then went back to his desk and took the diamond from his hiding place. He heard the front door of the house open and looked out of the window to see light spilling onto the pavement. His father's long shadowed knife across the street. Finn could see his attention was focused at the far end of the street where a parked van started its engine, and without even turning on its light, it slowly pulled away. His father turned back to the house, and there was the heavy sound of the front door being bolted. Finn wrapped the diamond in an old pair of pants and placed it at the back of his underwear drawer where it would be safe. He didn't know what he was doing with it, only that he felt it too late to admit having picked it up in the first place. It was his souvenir. No one would need to know. He sat back down at his desk and flipped through The Most Great Lives, only half registering the text, until from beneath it he pulled out a smaller, thinner book. On its cover was a man in a blue medical overalls holding a dog by the jaw. It might have been too clear if he was about to help the dog or punch it, except for the title, half obscured by the short library stamp. "So, you want to be a veterinarian?" Finn read a few pages, poring over the images of dogs and cats, birds and lizards, with instruments pointed at their ears, holding down their tongues, combing through their fur, feathers or skin, each in the hands of a confident-looking person in scrubs. He imagined himself in those scrubs rather than a fighting suit, and he closed his eyes and saw himself tending to the animals rather than blasting one, healing creatures rather than shrinking them with his desiccator into tiny little balls. His daydream was interrupted by the sound again, deep in the house. Finn placed his head on his desk, the page of the book cool on his cheek, and listened to the noises, feeling the vibration tickle his face. Crump, 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 then silence, then a squeak of a drill, then silence, then another vump, 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 then silence, then squeak of the drill. They didn't stop him from falling quickly into a deep sleep. Right, so this next page is from A Concise Guide to Legend Hunters World, Volume 2, Chapter 65, The Infested Side. I'm also going to read what was in this book. Over the years, there have been instances of legend hunters travelling to the infested side, either to wage an attack or because they were abducted by a legend. There was even one infamous attempt to make peace with legends, and in at least 3 recorded cases, people simply tripped and fell into a gateway. The experience of those who returned from the infested side are largely unverified. However, there are consistencies in their accounts. They each arrive home with vivid descriptions of a scorched world, poisoned and poisonous, where death clings to every bare tree and every shard of burnt scrub. They also arrive home with a really, really bad smell. So, over hundreds of years of such visits, added to the words and screams of thousands of interrogated legends, we have learned many things about the infested side. Some of them may even be true. Right, end of chapter 9. I go straight into 10.